There is a lack of awareness. There is a fear of addressing the issue because somehow people believe that these spiritual powers that witch doctors have will attack them. So the best thing is to ignore.
Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Remington Ramsey, and I did want to, at the top of the hour, at the top of the show, make sure you understand that this episode is a little different. If you're listening to this in your car with your kids, you might think twice about this episode. We're going to get into some very deeply troubling issues with a ministry that Into Publishing and Real Producers Magazine have teamed up with to fight human trafficking. So this is your disclaimer at the beginning. I definitely want you to listen to this, but if you have kids around, we'll be talking about things you might not want, suitable for a younger audience. But today I have Peter. And Peter, how do you say your last name?
Sewakiryanga.
I'm going to have to take some practice on that.
But call me Peter Michael.
Peter Michael. I like that. Okay, so Peter's got an incredible story. We have been working with his ministry for a couple of years now, and he is based out of Uganda. And we're going to be talking today about the reason for his ministry, why it started, and it's a very specific type of human issue, which is actually human sacrifice. And you hear this and you think, well, that's something that we think happened way back in the day. It doesn't happen anymore. But Peter is quite literally living this nightmare in Uganda. And Peter, can you fill us in on why? And it's not just human sacrifice; it's child sacrifice. Why did this become a thing? Why is this currently an issue and has been for so long in Uganda?
There is a belief in Uganda that when you sacrifice a child, you get wealth, you get protection, you get some level of blessing. Your wealth will grow, or you'll be able to protect your wealth. Some children have been kidnapped and buried under construction sites alive because people believe that when you bury the body parts of a child, or the child alive, or the blood or tissue, your construction site will be successful. You'll build it well, and you have clients and be able to protect your wealth. There is also people who believe that when you sacrifice a child, you get a certain form of treatment for your illness that is persisted. And so there is largely an economic benefit. And this is done largely by people called witch doctors who believe in witchcraft, who lie to people that they'll get wealth by sacrificing a child, or they'll get wealth by using the body parts of a child and mix them in witchcraft concoctions, or to get protection of whatever they want to do. There is a constant demand and supply of those that kidnap, and those that supply those children, and those that demand for the body parts for protection of their wealth or whatever they have desired to do.
So you're standing in a somewhat developed part of Uganda, and so it's not just villages. Like, I think some people I've talked to in America don't really picture exactly what this looks like in terms of society. But the witch doctors, I mean, they don't have, the way I understand it, they don't have like a church where they're preaching up, evil and flooding the minds of everybody sitting in the congregation. It's kind of done one at a time. If I remember right, you said they actually will hide out in a jungle wooded area and attack that way. How are they poisoning the minds of people and keeping the message going, these lies that their life will be basically blessed if they do this? I mean, obviously it started from a lie from years ago that continues to haunt the people.
Yeah, there is a huge sense of desperation. Largely, we are a very small country with a huge population, with a lot of still developing health systems and a high level of poverty. And so there has been an attachment of some cases of children to people who have been wealthy. And so a wealthy person has been arrested with the head of a child. And so very quickly, information spreads to the community, to the villages, and they say, okay, this is how the wealthy get rich, is by killing children. And there has not been a quick tiger reaction on some of this misinformation because of intent and fear, and also confusion of what needs to be done. There has been also people that largely do not even believe in witchcraft, but they have seen that there is an economic benefit to it, and they have grown because they can manipulate people and take their belongings. So they would take their money, they would take their property, and once they realize that they have stolen so much from them and that they don't have anything else to take, they will tell them, look, the best thing now, the ultimate sacrifice is the blood of a child, the head of a child, the ears of a child, name it. And then once they sacrifice the child, kidnap and sacrifice, then they are co-murderers, and therefore they will not go to report that abuse and theft to the police. And so the child has been lost, and the witch doctors or whoever is practicing that has achieved their goal of stealing from this person by taking the blood of a child.
So it's complete corruption, even on the other side. It's not just that; it's everyone who's hushing it because they don't want to be caught with the thievery of the rest of the possessions. What got you? Peter? What got you started? Not just in the foundation, but what got you initially so involved in this that you're like, I have to take action and stop this?
So I used to be a soccer player, and I retired from that because of my knee injury, and I started college. And I remember a friend of mine who was my captain at my soccer club started a soccer academy that was for pay. But then where I went to school, there was a slum, and my friend's soccer academy would use this university soccer field for training. For those kids who would pay, and then the kids from the slum would come to watch, but they wouldn't go on the turf. So I felt that, you know what, I'm going to start another soccer academy that can train in the morning, and the kids can come for free. And so we had gone in a couple of months into that, and a little boy called Ronald, a 9-year-old, went missing. The mother was a single mother, called me that, your friend hasn't come home. We don't know where he is. When it came the next day and he hadn't come home, I went to his home to visit. I realized that they were confused on where he was and what to do. And so we mobilized some friends, searched the bushes around, and we couldn't find him. And in about 3 days, we were able to find his decapitated body about 600 meters away from his home, without a head and sleeping in his own blood. And the stench that had started to come out there is what alarmed some people to go and search. I saw the confusion on the face of the mother. I saw the frustration on investigating a case because the police came and said, well, we don't have fuel in our car. Can you give us fuel? And they're talking that to a mother who's just lost a son. And then the investigation was frustratingly difficult. So we teamed up to support the police, to support the family, and we were able to arrest the witch doctor. But a few days later, I was involved in taking the funeral of that boy. And then about 3 weeks later, a family lost 3 children at the same time, and they called me to support them in the investigation. We went there and did the same, and we were able to bury and arrest this suspect who was sentenced to life later. Then I realized there was a bigger problem. About 2 months later, 2 boys, one was 4 and another one was 7. The 4-year-old had complete genital mutilation, and the 7-year-old had castration and a machete through his head, and they had stabbed him in the neck and was almost fighting for his life. He was in a coma for a whole 2 months. And so I just, because of my little friend and then the consistency of those cases that came to me, I realized there was a bigger problem that a lot of people feared to tackle. And we started to find ways on how we can help the victims and help the families. But primarily it was to fight for my friend, my little 9-year-old Ronald, who died. So,
how old were you when you started the soccer club?
I was 20. That was 2006.
So you were 20 years old?
That was 2006. I have to remember to count that.
How old are you?
I was
So
still young.
You're in your 20s, and here's what I don't. Was this the first time that you had been exposed to this? Like when you were a kid, did you know this was happening?
When I was a kid, I heard of rumors and a story of a rich man that had sacrificed his son, and it was almost like a mythical story that had happened way back, and no one could touch the date, the time, and so we heard of it, and the story was that son woke him up every time in dreams to go and work because he killed him to work. And for me, I thought, that was a fair tale, a mythical story. It existed, and nothing in reality that happened. Now, I was exposed to the sacrifice of animals as I was growing up, for blood sacrifices of animals and chickens in witchcraft. I knew that was happening. I had seen it before, but I had never ever seen a child sacrificed or mutilated, and that first incident is still fresh to my mind and soul. Now as it was then.
So you've been battling it ever since, and unlike some, instead of just watching it go by and try to pretend like it's not happening, you actually have to live this nightmare on a daily basis. I am curious. You're seeing this kind of stuff on a regular basis. You're raising money to fight and to find these witch doctors and to bring justice. And you actually have to work with the government on this. You have to work with the police. You were mentioning earlier today, you had I think a meeting with the Supreme Court or the local court. What is the battle from the political side that you have to fight in order to bring justice to these witch doctors?
Well, the lobbying and battle and advocacy, political side is intense. I'll give you an example. 2021, as we were trying to push Parliament to enact a law to prevent and prohibit child sacrifice, there was a witch doctor arrested at the gate of Parliament with the head of a 6-year-old child called Faith. And when they asked the witch doctor, he said he was taking that head to the Speaker of Parliament. And we had spent already 6 years trying to lobby government to Parliament to enact a law. And here, there is the highest, probably the third most powerful person in the country, and mentioned, or at least even she's not mentioned, but the head was arrested at Parliament. It was going its way to Parliament. There is a lack of awareness. There is a fear of addressing the issue because somehow people believe that these spiritual powers that witch doctors have will attack them. So the best thing is to ignore. There is also fear that it is ingrained in the community, so people will lose political power if they try to fight it. There is legislation that needs to be done, and it takes a lot of time and energy, and you have to pay to have political leaders to come into a meeting. You have to pay their fuel, you have to pay their lunch, you have to facilitate them to be able to come and discuss on this emergency child protection issue. You have resistance, fear from police officers to go and arrest a witch doctor because they think maybe the powers will, or it will turn back to them.
Right.
And it is painfully slow.
Right. Just like all politics.
Yeah.
Man, that is extremely frustrating. So not only are you fighting the corruption of the witch doctors and anyone else who is aiding in this terrible crime. You're also fighting the government who is aiding the corruption side. And so your mission, can you explain KCM? And we'll put in the link the website that explains your mission and what it is that you're actually fighting specifically. But the mission is called KCM. It's KYAMPISI.org. When someone gives money to this mission, Peter, what does it go specifically to fight this terrible crime?
Right now, certainly, we are still very underfunded as an organization. So any donations would go towards emergency rescues. We have a full-time team that is on the field. Some classified and undercover intelligence gathering kind of operations to counter the happening of the child sacrificial trafficking before it happens. And so we have a lot of leads, partly from those that are in prison that have nothing to lose and they have called us to give us information. We have informers on the ground that go and gather information, and we work with police to gather intelligence and to counter any intention, or to, especially to those that have already been involved in cases. We respond almost a tiger reaction response to cases of kidnaps, where a child kidnapped and is being taken. We have a team and work with police to be able to intercept the kidnap of a child. We respond to incidents that have happened. If a child has just been mutilated and survived or died, we are there on the scene and working with police to investigate, to make sure we preserve the scene of crime, to make sure that scientific evidence is collected, to be able to aid prosecution. We run a rehab center where these victims who have survived are rehabilitated, receive medical care, receive social protection, and largely because they are the key witnesses. And if they are not taken out of the community, they will be attacked and either killed to kill evidence. I just came back from Australia because I accompanied 2 boys who had genital mutilation, and they're getting genital reconstruction surgery in Salt Lake, Utah, and another girl right now in Australia, in Brisbane, and another girl who is in Salt Lake, Utah now receiving surgery. So we are seeking for expert specialized surgery, surgeons available to help the kids who have complex surgeries that have come from their mutilation and attacks. And then we follow cases to court for logical conclusion. And then we do advocacy and awareness, and we have a school also where these children come and are educated so that as they are taken away from their community for social protection, the right to education is not taken away. So we have a campus that feeds over 1,000 children every day, and educates them and supports their medical care and rehabilitation.
Well, we had partnered with you last year in Indianapolis specifically, and we're going to have you speak. Earl Seals, our mutual friend and founder of the N2 companies, ended up speaking in your place, and you couldn't make it to Indianapolis because you had a tragedy happen in your own life because you have been fighting this crime and these people for so long. As I understand it, they had actually abducted your own child. And when you went through that, I don't need to know details. But you're quite literally in this. You're quite literally like in the middle of this. And I just wonder, how do you balance living a life where you want to enjoy a lunch and you want to watch a funny cartoon, or just live life where you're not constantly in flight or fight mode? How do you do that? How do you balance your world right now when you're so in the thick of it?
It's difficult, but I've been very blessed to have good friends
So unfortunately, we did lose Peter connection-wise in Uganda. It's just kind of hard. He was actually taking this call in a cookware shop. It was the only place that had Wi-Fi in the area, and they were kind enough to let him do the interview. Obviously, one of the heaviest episodes we've ever done, just with what's going on in Uganda. What we didn't get to that I like to do to end the show is basically how you can get involved. And so in the show notes is going to be a link to the website and how to give. And what that money actually goes to is, like he said, once they, first of all, to fight in the first place, to actually rescue kids, to strengthen the streets where this is happening mostly, to go out and bring the witch doctors to justice. And so that's what part of the money goes to. The other part of the money goes to when something bad does happen, the surgeries and the flights and everything that needs to take place to save the kids that are able to pull out of this. And so if you feel so inclined to give to this organization, the link is going to be included here. Yeah, I would just encourage you to do more research on what it is that you can do in these situations. But a few years back, we decided to put all of our extra money, funds, and any type of efforts that we had towards charitable donations and organizations to fight human trafficking. And so there's 4 organizations that Real Producers has basically chosen to work with through Into Gives, Peter's being one of them. I've spoken with Peter a few times, and it's pretty amazing that he has a smile ever. But the reason he can is because he knows he's fighting this, and there is progress, and there is progress within the government, and there's progress within bringing this evil to justice. And so he's fighting the good fight quite literally on the front lines. We didn't get into it, but his daughter was actually abducted and beat. And more details I won't go through on this podcast, but that was the reason he couldn't come to Indy and speak. So this is someone that you can really get behind and know that even throughout all that, he's still fighting this fight. That concludes our show. Again, I know this was heavier, but everything that Real Producers is involved in, want to keep you guys in the know and see if we've chosen to get involved with this. We'll definitely encourage you to, and maybe through your brokerage or just your team or just you individually, this brought awareness and is the start of you starting the fight.